It is Thursday, July 8th, 2021, and this is the iPhoneography podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Greg McMillan, and I am joined by my esteemed co-host, Dave Podnar. How you doing, Dave?
Hey, Greg, how's it going?
Not going too bad. We've had a
Good here.
ton of rain here lately.
But, okay.
Supposed to be a half decent weekend, and a little below average temperatures for this time of year, but
okay.
we'll take it.
Well, at least you're not baking like some parts where it's dangerous heat and everything.
Yeah. There was some pretty nasty heat out in the West Coast there. Last week, so I'm pretty thankful for not having that. First of all, I want to say a big thanks to Joseph Ferreira for filling in for you last week. And we had a good little discussion about the wide camera. Now, that discussion, it kind of went off in a few different directions. We probably should have spoke more about the wide camera itself. As opposed to comparing it to other cameras, but that seemed to be the way we went. We kind of compared it to the ultra wide and the wide. So,
truthfully, unless you get into the dingy technical details of the actual camera itself, which is kind of hard to do because each phone's camera, the 12 versus the 11 versus the 10S versus the 10, they're making minor tweaks each time to where
that's true.
Like when the 13 and heavy rumor is they're going to call it a 13. So they're saying, well, there's iOS 13. So why should we be afraid of the number 13? So they're going to come out with that. Camera.
I don't think Apple's superstitious about anything like that, obviously.
No. And also, that's a heavy Western mindset per se, and China's a pretty big, as far as I know, there's not the fear of the number 13 in the Chinese culture as there is in the Western European based cultures. So it won't impact them as much. Also, I can't really see anyone saying, "Ooh, I'm not going to get this phone because it's a number 13 phone." We've passed 13 phones. This isn't the 13th version of the phone because of, the numbering system. So I could see them doing it. But even this one where the changes in the camera, in the actual cameras itself will be bigger for the wide and ultra wide, it sounds like. And the telephoto will still be similar. There's still going to be tweaks to it.
Oh, sure.
Even though this is the 13 is pretty much going to be a 12S in terms of changes. The body will look almost the same. There'll be minor physical differences, but unless you look hard or know the colors, you won't notice. But there's still going to be tweaks enough where, of course, it's going to be the best camera we ever put in an iPhone.
Put in an iPhone.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's where the biggest differences are going to be physically. They're talking about major camera bump and all this other stuff. So, but that's, we'll keep an eye on that kind of stuff, and we'll get to that as we go through the summer. Just let folks know, Dave, about your situation with your computer and what you're doing there. You're not in your usual spot by the looks of things.
Well, I'm a little bit similar place, but different computer. We've had to rejigger things a little bit. Normally, I do this on an iMac with that big, beautiful screen right in front of me. But we've had to move things around because Ruth had to use the iMac for her work. And instead of me unplugging it, hauling it, this is the one advantage of a laptop versus a desktop, even a simple unplug and plug it in, it just works. Having to unplug, lug up 27 inches of aluminum, plop it down on the desk, find room, rehook everything up, get it running, and then at the end of the day, unplug everything, lug it back downstairs, plug it in so she can use it tomorrow. I'm just going off my regular I know this may be a swear word for some people, Windows machine.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I'm assuming the camera on the iMac is bad. I mean, yours is better. They improved it on
Yeah, they really
the
improved it. Yeah.
M1 iMac. They improved it, but the old Intel ones were crappy
Yeah, they're only
compared to what they should.
720p.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're better than some, but even though it was crappy, this webcam's even worse. So I can actually tell on what I'm seeing coming back. Now, if you're listening to this on a podcast, who cares? I'm actually using the
Yeah.
same mic and headset that I normally use, so that's not going to affect anything. Um, but I'm a little more, I can actually tell I'm a little more pixelated now than what I normally am. So hopefully, knock on wood, no audio hiccup or any weird stuff going on with the going off of and actually it's around the same age. They gave us this laptop at work around the same time I actually bought the iMac.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Because recently I had some issues with it, and when we mean internal IT support, and myself called Dell, and they said, "Oh, you're out of warranty. What account of cost center do you want to charge this correction to?" And then all of a sudden I heard, "No, that's okay. You're out of warranty. No, that's okay. We're not going to call. We're not going to do anything. We'll figure it out on our own."
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so the computer's 3 years old or so. Because I know it's on
Oh,
average
well.
how long the service is.
It may be Windows, but it does the trick, and you won't be able to put Windows 11 on it. So here goes.
I don't even want to
But
think about that.
yeah, we won't even go there.
No.
So this week we are going to continue with a quick little discussion on the telephoto camera. We're covering all the different cameras that are available on the iPhone. I don't think we're going to do the selfie camera though. I think once we get this one done, we'll go to the ultra wide, and then that'll be it. Because I don't know about you, Dave, but I don't take any selfies.
I take some, obviously, metal munching.
Yeah.
But
Well, you know what? We can cover that. I
but
think
you know
we
what
can
though?
cover that.
I think we may want to hold off because I'm expecting, based on what they did with the iPad Pro, how they
Oh
upped the
yeah.
selfie cam on that, including for FaceTime, where it's basically oversampling the image and only giving you a much smaller amount, so it can do the auto pan and auto tilt
Yeah,
and
yeah.
auto zoom, like the Facebook Portal device.
Yeah. Well, we may cover
I
that
have
maybe,
I have big
once the new
hopes.
hardware comes out.
I'm having big hopes in just around 2 months now. It's going to be September. September equals new iPhone. I mean, ever since the iPhone, what was it, 4 or 4S, when they switched from the releasing it at WWDC to the fall release,
Yeah,
it was
it
somewhere
was
around there. It was
somewhere
early
around there.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, it was early. Yeah.
But September means new iPhone. So you're going to have the now, of course, the really good sites aren't going to point out, but you're going to have some sites saying, "Oh, we have inside information from people who talk to the the back end channel, the
The supply chain.
the supply chain, saying that there's definitely the iPhone, the new iPhone has begun production." Like, yeah, new September iPhone takes a couple months to ramp up if you're going to have a few million on hand, which they want a few million on hand. Therefore, it's in production now.
Yes. Oh, yeah, for
Shocking.
sure.
Shocking.
Yeah.
This isn't the first iPhone where, like, 3 weeks ahead of time, Steve Jobs looks at it and goes, "I don't like this plastic screen. It scratches. Let's make it glass." And in
Yeah.
3 weeks, they call out the Corning and make Gorilla Glass.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, they're definitely in the production now, and so that kind of ties into what we'll talk about after we talk about the telephoto. I'll touch a little bit on the iOS 15 beta, which I put on my 10s Max because it's sitting here available, and I don't have to worry about having it on my daily driver. So all right, so let's jump into the telephoto camera. let's see here. We've got some discussion items here. Okay, so I'll start with a very quick overview of the differences between the three cameras, just kind of as a review. So I'll go to screen share. And you can see my screen, correct?
Yes. I can see your
Okay.
desktop there, yes.
All right, so this here was with the ultra wide, and
Ooh. And
this is
the new car.
this is the new car. Yes, we traded the Rav4 for a Venza. Had this come out, I just want to say that had this come out when we were looking at the Rav4, we wouldn't have had the Rav4. We've had two different Venzas before, and we really love them. And when this one came out, man, it was the cat's meow. So anyway, this is the new Venza, the blue Venza on Instagram. It was the blue Rav. I just changed the name, so it's the same account. Anybody that's following will still see it. And so this is with the ultra wide, and let me think. No, sorry, this is the wide camera, the one that Joe and I talked about last time. And it's a typical wide angle shot. I was able to stand, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 feet away from the car. And then this is the ultra wide, where I was able to move into about 2 feet away from the car.
Okay.
And my mom, she's not tech savvy at all, and in fact she's got a negative number for tech savviness. She couldn't believe how close I could stand to the car and get the whole thing in the frame. And so yeah, ultra wide is, I mean, it really distorts everything. The foremost feature of things come really up close, and then they fade off into the distance really fast. And then this is with the telephoto.
Oh wow.
Telephoto on my 12 Pro Max, and it's a 65 millimeter.
Right.
And it gives you probably a lot closer, just like with all the telephotos that are on the iPhones. They give you a lot closer angle of view, I guess you could say, of what your eyes really see. So that's more like naturally what it looked like. Oh, excuse me. So now
this one actually looks like it could be in a brochure too.
Yeah, that's when it was still nice and clean. We've been driving it through the rain up here lately, and it's kind of dirty. But so for those listening on the podcast, go to the YouTube channel and have a look. No, just kidding. So
please,
obviously, telephoto, you could stand further away and get the whole thing, get the whole car in the frame. Wide angle, you can step a little bit closer and then get the whole car in the frame. With ultra wide, you can step almost right up to it, a couple of feet away, and still get the whole car in the frame. And that kind of, but the wider the lens, the more distorted the image. So that's
I would say the ultra wide even has a fisheye look to it.
Yeah, it does.
Which can be good artistically,
Oh yeah, for sure.
It just definitely gives you a drawn out look to the car.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's not realistic in terms of you're standing 2 feet away from the car. This is what your eye is going to see.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Like I say, the telephoto gives you the most, excuse me, the most realistic, view.
Great. Just for people who are watching, can you put up the telephoto and the wide side by side or at the same time?
Yep.
Okay.
Just the telephoto and the wide, or the ultra wide?
Yeah. No, just telephoto and the wide.
Okay.
Like I said, I think the ultra wide, unfortunately, there's so much of the fisheye look to it, the bulbous front part, that it kind of gets a extra distortion versus these two, where, and also I would say one thing with the ultra wide is not everyone has it.
Right.
Where most people, I would say a majority of people with iPhones have, at least in the last couple of years now, have a phone with a we'll have a wider telephoto.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just fumbling away at my computer here, trying to get them to go side by side. There.
Okay.
That's pretty close.
Slaying the
There.
Because one thing that you can notice, and trying to give a little description for those on audio, if you look at where the Toyota badge is in the car, if you look at the wide, it's actually protruding there, making it look like it's coming out at you. Now the ultra wide, it was very protruding, but even with the wide, you can tell. And I've seen events in person. I actually saw one in live that's close to us, at a shopping over the weekend, a new one like yours, and the front does not protrude out like that.
No, certainly not
No.
that much.
No. So that's one thing that, even if you don't have to do the telephoto, not even if you're thinking about I'm gonna have to do a telephoto so I can zoom in and get closer, which is, of course, when you think telephoto, I want to get closer, I'm going to zoom optically versus digitally, because of course it's going to look a whole lot nicer if you use optics versus digital. But it also makes a difference when it comes to, distortion when you're close to something, and in terms of flattening the image, and having these side by side can actually help us out, in terms of comparing, where if you look at the for the wide angle, if you look at the trees, not necessarily the far off trees, but just the closer trees in the background, they feel very, very far off. But if you look at the telephoto, even though the car's pretty close to the same size, the trees seem a whole lot closer.
Yeah. It really compresses everything in the image that way.
Now, the most extreme version I saw of this, and sometimes it helps to see the extremes, because the differences are shown a lot better versus seeing where you have to only see a little bit of a difference. Now this wasn't an iPhone. This is a professional shooting with a DSLR with, I think, a 500 millimeter lens. I think it was a massive zoom. It was a massive zoom lens, but it was doing cities at night, cityscapes with the full moon. But because of the massive zoom he was using, it really compressed and made the moon look mammoth.
Yeah.
And he even said, people are going to say this is a fake shot. Here's my iPhone recording me taking the shot so you can see what it looks like. It's because I had this massive zoom that everything gets compressed. And admittedly, no one's going to use, no one should use that much of a zoom lens. I know there's ways you can hook up, the lenses to an iPhone. Don't do it, people. But that kind of, it makes it easier to see, wow, I didn't realize using a zoom lens would compress everything so much. Well, having a side by side helps too, where you can easily see the trees here, or even the trees that are far off, in the telephoto don't look as far off in the distance. So it also, in terms of, if you're taking shots and you want to know which one to use, either the telephoto or the wide, it kind of helps to know what are the effects if you use the telephoto or the wide. And maybe you want to have that extra depth shown. In that case, you don't want to use the telephoto.
Yeah, that's right. If you want to make the things in the distance look far away, then by all means use a wide angle, or even more so the ultra wide if you have it.
And then reposition yourself if you can.
And that's the key thing to this too, is I had to reposition myself for each shot because I wanted the car to take up the same amount in the frame. So with the telephoto, I was probably 30 feet away or more. And then with the wide angle, I was up to maybe 10 feet away. And then with the ultra wide, I was at as close as 2 or 3 feet from the car. So it just really changes that much going from one camera to the other.
Mhm.
So that's our illustration as to how the telephoto compares to the wide and the ultra wide. Now, while I'm on the screen share here, I'll just pull up a few other ones here.
For sure.
Now, this was from my 8 Plus, and one of my favorite places to shoot. This is a river scene. So for listeners of the audio, it's a river scene in the winter. The water's still flowing quite nicely. You know, it's not covered in ice or anything else, but there's ice along the edges, snow-covered trees and whatnot. And there's a bit of a drop in the flow of the water from, you know, it looks like about 1.5 feet or so, where the rocks drop to another level. And it just, it really gives you, and it looks from a real quick glance at this photo, will look like a black and white. And I've had people ask me if it's black and white, but it is indeed color, because there's some little sticks and things in the river that show the color that they are. And you can actually see a little bit of the green in the evergreens, but just the aesthetics of the image. It was taken with slow shutter cam, so it's long exposure. And if I'd have done this wide angle, it just wouldn't have the same feel to the image. Like, it just wouldn't have that, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but I just think it looks better from the telephoto camera. And
Oh
you
no,
know,
it's real striking too. And this is one thing we were talking about, things feeling far and close away. With the
yeah,
telephoto, the difference between the up close branches and the far shore, it's kind of hard to tell how long of a distance that is.
yeah, and there's that compression factor again, right,
Yeah,
Dave?
right.
It just brings everything together. Meanwhile, that was probably, excuse me, that was probably about I would say 30 yards
Oh wow.
across from
Wow.
the trees in the foreground to the trees across the river. I'm guessing it was around 25 to 30 yards. So that just, you know, that's another um, indication of how much it compresses the image.
Right.
And for a phone, that's quite the compression ratio, or whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially when you have an image where the distance between the near and the far, all of it is actually something you want to have the eye focus on.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
You know.
Um, this image here was taken at a place called the Grotto, and it's up, excuse me, it's up on the Bruce Peninsula, north of where I live here. And that peninsula goes up, and it separates Georgian Bay on the east from Lake Huron on the west. So that'll give folks an idea of where that could be. But this was looking down off a cliff, which was probably, well, let's just say I would not want to jump off of it. I would say it was probably 100 feet or more.
Oof.
And this obviously with the telephoto of my 8 Plus, and I just got my 8 Plus, and I went up there and spent the day with a friend shooting these things, this area. And you know, the waves were crashing against the shoreline, but that water is that color up there. It's just absolutely amazing.
Oh.
It's like a bluish green kind of color. And you know, I was really ecstatic about shooting up there. I'd never been up at this particular place before, but looking down, you know, you can pull in a lot of detail with the telephoto. You know, if I'd used the wide, I would have got, you know, probably half the bay. And it just goes to show you that the telephoto is an amazing camera.
Yeah.
And again,
Wow.
if you're just listening to the audio, I just can't put into words how to describe how it looks. But you know, and the 8 Plus, it wasn't a bad camera. It's the same one you
Oh
had in the
no.
10, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So, but you know what though? I think the 10 has a little better aperture than the 8 Plus did. I think it was a 0.2 difference. I think
It
that's why they were.
it might be minor, but I really think, like you said, it's an old phone too. You know, the 10 and the 8 Plus.
Yeah, they're
even
like
over.
4 years old.
Yeah. So you figure, and like I said, I think the big difference between the 8 Plus and the 10 was LCD versus OLED and Touch ID
Yeah, yeah,
versus Face ID.
right. Yeah, and the 10, it was the start of this whole new generation of iPhones
Right.
where, the home button's gone unless you get what is it, the SE,
Yeah.
I think had the
Yeah.
home button.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
The
yeah,
SE still has the home button. Yeah.
yeah. So this one here, this is just looking out over the inner bay, like closer into town here where I am. And this was with Spectre and on my 10s Max. And with in this case, it's just the water, which is silky smooth because of the long exposure, and it brings the shoreline on the other side of the bay in closer, and it isolates just a small part of the tree, which was a big willow tree. And again, compressing the image, bringing things in close. So if you want to isolate part of the landscape, I mean, I've heard of professional landscape photographers doing this, where they get those long lenses, like you mentioned, that big 500 millimeter lens, and they'll have a whole mountain range to shoot, but they'll isolate a part of it with this big lens. And that's basically what I'm doing here, is I'm just isolating part of the whole scene with my lens. And I was able to not have the shore that I was standing on in the bottom of the frame in the foreground, because I was able to I basically put the horizon line just a little bit above center. And in this particular image, there's a reflection of the tree in the water, and the sun's reflected in it. And it just, with the slow shutter ability of Spectre, it was just kind of made a bit of a surreal looking image. So, and I'm gonna start putting these images in the blog post for the website.
Okay.
Any of the images that we talk about, unless there's somebody else's, of course. But if they're ours, then we can put them in. But I'll put these in the show notes on the website, so that people can see. If they don't watch the video on YouTube, they'll still be able to see these images and what they're all about. This was a front door of a house, just downtown where I live, and I was able to quickly take the shot and keep going without anybody being suspicious of me shooting it. And just being able to isolate the growth of the greenery around the doorway kind of just made the image. Had I got more of the house in, it might not have had the same effect. So, and part of this is the editing too. I really darkened it down, and I'm not sure which phone this was.
It almost looks a little claustrophobic, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
with the greenery kind of crowding in from all sides.
yeah. Now that I think of it, I don't think anybody was living in the house when I took this, because I mean, it looks like it's been neglected. But I mean, if they were living there, I'd gladly buy them a set of shears so they can do some trimming, because it was growing right in where you could almost not even walk up the steps into the house to the door. But again, another use case for the telephoto is shooting from the street and bringing in detail of something that it just saves you having to walk up to it. And this was out on the highway, a little wee church on the side of the road, that's closed in the wintertime but open in the summer. People can go in and pray and worship and do whatever they want, because it's just open to the public.
Oh wow.
And this was I was on my way home from somewhere, and I just thought, well, it looks really neat with all the snow on the ground that's been untouched, nobody's walked through it. And it was kind of mid to late afternoon in the winter, which around here would be 2 o'clock, because it would be dark around 4:30. So but yeah, I just I did some with the wide angle, and I wanted to isolate the church and the big tree beside it. So I just shot with the telephoto, and there you have it. And this is another Spectre shot. This is down by the bay, and it was a really, really windy day. I could not stand outside my vehicle to take this picture because the camera shake would have been just too much. So basically what it is waves crashing on the shore. I would say probably in November, because there's no leaves on the tree. It's brown season, like stick season type of thing.
Yeah.
And Spectre, where I just tapped the shutter and tapped it again real quick because I didn't want to go too long on it.
Okay.
That way I could show movement in the waves, but yet not have everything flowing smooth. I wanted to show the roughness of the water. But I took this out of my car window, and I had to do a lot of color correction because, of course, the window was tinted and everything looked like a greenish blue. So I tried to color correct it the best I could, but yeah, just isolating part of the scene again. Had I used a wide angle, I would have got other cars because there was a few other people down there, and it just makes a big difference between having a decent looking landscape and one that's kind of mediocre. And I'll just go through one more here. And this is a macro.
Wow.
My favorite kind of thing to shoot, I think. This is an ant eating away at a rose of Sharon blossom in our backyard. And looking on the screen here, it's not crystal clear, but it's, there's the thing with the telephoto as compared to the wide. The aperture is not as open. It's not as wide open as the wide angle. So that it doesn't let as much light in. So you have to probably overexpose just a little bit just to get enough light in, but that kind of causes the shutter to be a little longer. And especially with a macro shot, you tend to get a little more movement in whatever you're shooting. And with macro on the iPhone, it's so hard to get a sharp shot because any little movement is magnified big time when you're shooting macro. It'll all be in the book.
Now, let me ask you real quick for this one. Do you remember what app? Did you use the built-in app somehow, or did you use another app to do the macro?
I was probably using Moment Macro, but with halide. And I use halide because it's got focus peaking, and I was able to wait till I could see the ant's head light up in green, which is what the focus peaking does. It's like a green overlay, and it picks up the sharp edges. And when that was green, I hit the shutter. And again, it doesn't always work because they move quickly and the phone jiggles a lot. But after probably 24 shots, I finally got a good shot, good enough that I thought was worthy of posting to Instagram or something anyway. So,
wow.
Now, okay, so telephoto with macro, it brings in stuff a lot closer, obviously, than it does with the wide angle. So I'm going to cover this a lot in my book that's coming out later this year, but here's another difference between the telephoto and the wide. Excuse me. The focal range, which is basically where you can achieve near focus and far focus before it starts to fall off either way. On the wide angle, you might have, like, say, almost 10 millimeters of range, whereas with the telephoto, it's about half that. So with the telephoto, with the macro lens on the telephoto, you got so little room to play with to achieve sharp focus on your subject. And I mean, there's no way I could do a shot like this, this ant, on a tripod where I could keep the camera still and use a timer and all that stuff. If I was using a static object, yeah, it would work out. But with a live little creature like an ant, it's very difficult. So that's that's my tip for doing macro,
Yeah.
with you can get a lot closer and get a really good look at stuff, but the image quality is slightly less, and the depth of field is a lot smaller than the
Right.
already small depth of field on a wide.
Right. And I was just checking out Camera Plus too, because that's what I use for macro.
Yeah.
And that does not allow you to manually switch cameras. So you're
Oh,
stuck using, at least for the 10, maybe with a newer
you know what?
version of the phone,
I
you can.
think you're right, Dave, because I think I tried that too.
Okay.
I think it only works on the
So,
wide.
okay, yeah. So if
Yeah.
you're looking for it to do something different, you may need to use a different app for if you use, let's say, like I said, if you use one app that's consistent. And also that kind of goes into a second point is if you're taking a photo and it's starting to get dark. Now, I think Apple's gotten their dark or low light photography has gotten better with each phone with hardware and
Hmm.
software tweaks. But if you have an older one and it's not really that bright and you start zooming in, you do a 2x zoom, you may not be using the telephoto lens with the
In the
base
Apple
camera
camera app.
in the Apple camera because it may say, oh, you went 2x, but it's too dark for us, for Apple to determine that this is going to be a good photo. So we're just going to use the wide angle and do a digital 2x zoom. Trust us, we're Apple.
Yeah.
Now, if you use
Yeah.
another app, like I'm sure Halide, I know Camera Plus 2, you can actually say, no, use the telephoto.
You can
You
force
can
select
force it.
that
Yeah.
camera. Yeah.
But if you're
Yeah. And there's a
if
lot
you're
of different camera apps that can do that. Yeah.
but if you're somebody who primarily uses the built-in camera, and you're in an area where it's like it's starting to get a little darker, it may not be perfect, and it's like, well, wait a minute, this doesn't look like it has the same, even though I did the 2x or in your case 2.5x, why doesn't it have the same depth? Why isn't it compressed as much? Well, it may be using the wide and doing just the 2x digitally, because
Hmm.
that's what Apple, that's Apple's has more hand holding with their built-in apps than other apps do and have more of a manual ability to.
Right. And so that leads us into portrait mode,
Right.
because with portrait mode, it's using both cameras. Unless you've got like a 10R or the SE,
Right.
maybe the newer version of the SE could probably do
The
portrait
newer
mode with
one.
the
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
lens.
Yeah.
Um,
But only for
and that's, I
people.
mean,
But
yeah, like that's
only
a
for
lot of
people.
computational stuff, but only for
Right.
people, right? With the multi-lens phones, you can do like depth images, like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be a person, but with the single lens phones, it needs that facial
Right.
recognition in order for it to kick in.
Right.
Um,
Right. If you're using the built-in app. Now, Halide, I
yes.
think, can do depth for the single camera for some because they've hard coded in this is a whatever car, or this is so do depth on this, but they have had to manually code that in, where Apple, and like I said, they've gotten better with each version in terms of the coding and the software and the AI, which some people
Yeah.
will decry by saying, oh, you're taking the control out of the photographer's hands. And I'm thinking, Apple's going for 90% of the market. They're not good.
Exactly.
If you are someone who literally is that picky, the iPhone will still put out really great photos, and there's apps out there that will give you that extra manual. But even serious people on the iPhone, a lot of times, they don't want to deal with all the manual adjustments that you can do. They want to focus on the composition, the lighting, and not necessarily the, the software settings as you're ready to take a picture. So the built-in app doesn't allow you to do that.
Yeah. Um, so was there anything else you wanted to touch on before we
Well,
move on
one
to the
thing
beta?
kind of related to what you saw with the nose on the car, if you're doing a portrait of a person, not portrait mode, but just a portrait shot of a person, try
Hmm.
telephoto. Because if you do the wide, all of a sudden that nose may get bigger and bigger. The ultra wide will be mammoth, and it's optics. It's literally optics. This is physics. You
Right.
can't get around physics. You can with a little bit, like I know Polar and other things where you can do distortion, where you can kind of bring in the center of the object to compensate for the lens. But if you have another lens you can do, and you're doing a portrait of a person, and this is what now if you have if you have the 3 lens like you do, like the Max does, or the Pro, which is not the Max but the Pro, you can do, because on mine where I only have the 2, I have to go between the telephoto and the wide. But then you can also do, if you have portrait on, like for yours, you can do it between the wide and the ultra wide. But the way Apple does
I keep
it now,
forgetting about that.
Yeah. Because a lot of us are used to, this is what I had to do with the 2 camera system versus the 3.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, Google, with their built-in algorithm and software, can do 1 camera portrait mode. Not as quickly or as easily on device, but because you need the computation and the software behind the scenes, they've had to upload it to the cloud, and which isn't horrible in their case, but it can be done. It's not as good though as having 2 cameras that are just a little offset where you can triangulate the difference.
Yeah. Now, do they not? Oh, go ahead.
We'll say that. Okay, go ahead, because I was going to go into a little bit of 13 talk too, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I was just going to say, do their latest Pixel models not do it on device now?
The newest ones may do it on device. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
I think they
but
do.
only the latest. But only the latest, because even a year or 2 old one, it was still pushing it up to the cloud.
Yeah. Okay.
Which that's a strength. That's a strength. But one thing they are, it looks like they're changing with the 13 is the layout of the camera. To where, if you notice in the back of your camera, I believe you have 2 vertical and one's kind of off on the side. Yeah. So you have the 2 vertical and the one. So the mock-ups, of course, who knows, but the mock-ups, consistent mock-ups, instead of having it like this, where 2 vertical and one off on the side, but it's going to be a more of a
the wide and the telephoto, I think, are going to be diagonal to each other.
Yeah, so everything's going to be more in a regular, not just a triangle with the long on the side, but a tilted triangle, which could be better for augmented and for portrait mode, depending on, you could use now that the 3 cameras look like they're more in a circular versus a flat when 2 things coming off on the side. That may help with portrait too.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is that what I'm hearing is that they're all going to have in-body stabilization.
Yes. Yeah.
Like on the 12 Pros, normally it was the wide up here and the telephoto down here. Well, this time it's reversed, because the telephoto needs to be away from the corner of the phone to make room for the in-body stabilization. And I think when they're doing that with the 13, having them, first of all, it's a bigger array, and then having trying to do this without having 2 kitty corner like this, and then the other one down here. Well, I've been hearing they're going to put stabilization in all the cameras.
Yeah. Now, if you want to see something a little freaky, Sebastian DeWitt at SDW on Twitter today. So we're talking on let's see here, July 8th at, I don't know how long ago it was. It wasn't that long ago. Put out a photo of what the camera module looks like. It looks like someone took it out.
Yes, I saw that with the stabilizer.
And it actually shows the stabilizer, and as he described it, it looks like it's being bench pressed by a spider.
Yeah.
Because the stabilizer they're basically wires that act like springs that come up to actually stabilize and then move it. Yeah, and it's a little freaky looking.
It does 5,000 corrections per second.
Yeah.
which is like mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's crazy, but um, well, I think we've pretty much covered
Yeah.
the telephoto.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a bit about the beta. Um, so like I said, I've got it on my 10s Max. Um, you know what, I really don't have a whole lot to say, okay, because I haven't really played around with it too much. I did try CarPlay with it, and in order to do that, I had to tether it to my 10s Max. So when I did that, wherever I was going, the signal dropped off to a really weak signal, and I lost the connection between the two phones. So
Oh,
then
okay.
CarPlay quit working. So I wasn't able to really try out the navigation and things like that. I know Matt Hoffman said he's really looking forward to seeing how that works out, but
Yeah. Okay.
sorry, Matt,
I
couldn't
was
get it to
trying to
go.
I was trying to think, why did you have to tether it? Because you have the 10x mass. There's no sim in it,
Right,
correct?
exactly.
So okay,
Yeah.
okay. I just wanted to clarify that for people too. Is that
Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's a pretty good point.
there's no, the reason why it's tethered isn't because of the CarPlay, it's because there's no cell chip in it or no
Right.
active SIM card to the cell to work. So
And
it's
you know
kind of an
what?
iPod Touch.
Yeah, and CarPlay worked because it's
Mhm.
plugged in, right? The
Right.
CarPlay still worked. It was just that the maps and navigation wouldn't update as I was going,
Right.
right? So
Right.
I could still play music, I could still listen to a podcast, things like that, but I just couldn't do anything where it needed data,
Data.
you
Okay.
know, a stream of data, right?
Mhm.
Um, so that was CarPlay. Um, One thing I was hoping to get a closer look at was the notifications and how they. So what I did do is I set up for, I think it was 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Basically, you can set up uh, like a notification summary, and you can pick the apps
Hmm.
that you want, which is kind of cool because that way I can get notifications for like Instagram posts, iMessage,
Mhm.
Facebook Messenger, things that would normally come in probably every day, and you
Right.
can get those grouped together twice a day. So that's kind of a cool thing. Something I haven't looked too closely at is the focus feature, where you can, because it's not my daily carry that I take with me out of the house. Um, I wasn't really able to say, okay, uh, I'm driving, and this is what I want you to, this is what I want to come through, and this is what I want you to block. So I wasn't able to really try that out too much. Um, so I mean, this is going to sound like a stupid review, but it's early days for me with it anyway.
Right.
But
Right.
it's not too bad for being buggy. It's pretty good. Now this was the original beta for the public beta, and
Okay.
it was public beta 2. They skipped one because they're keeping the developer beta and the public beta numbers the same. So it was the
Oh,
second
okay.
developer
That makes
beta.
sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was
That
this,
makes
it
sense
was
then. Okay.
developer beta 2, and they just called it public beta 2. That way the numbers will
Okay.
match going forward. Um, Something that I did learn that I haven't experienced yet, but I did hear that if you create a new note in the Notes app on a device with iOS 15 beta, that note may not appear in, like, okay, so I've got uh, iOS beta 15 or iOS 15
Okay.
beta, and then I've got
Okay.
iOS 14.6 or whatever the latest one is. If
Right.
I create a note on here in the Notes app, it may not show up on here.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's something to watch out for.
Which I'm assuming is a beta issue and everything will be cleared up, hopefully by the time we get
Yeah,
closer to release.
yeah, I'm sure it will be. And I don't know, maybe that has something to do with, like, on iPad and on Mac OS, you can swipe up from the corner to start a new note on,
Okay. Yeah.
and
Because of the
then
quick note.
yeah, when and then when you swipe it back down again, bang, it's in your Notes app. So
Mhm.
it could have something to do with that. I don't know, but all I've heard is that if you start a new note on the iOS 15 beta, it may not appear. They're not saying it won't, but they're saying it may
There's
not
no
appear.
guarantee. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're on the
Okay.
beta, and if it's the only device you've got, just be aware that, that could be a serious thing. If you put an important note in your phone, it may not
Right.
show up on your Mac or your iPad or your other
And
iPhone or whatever.
and,
So
and this also kind of goes after the point of betas are there. Mostly the original reason to have betas were software developers and large organizations to make sure
mhm.
things were stable before the real version came out. It wasn't for your average schmo to go out and just play with the new version. So if
Yeah,
you're a large company with 500, going back, let's say, to computers, or even, if you have 1,000 people using iPhones, you want to make sure the next version of the operating system is going to work with, all of the software that you use on a day-to-day basis. So if you use, let's say, Salesforce and their mobile app, you want to make sure that's going to work with the new version, or you want to see
right.
what changes are coming. So you want to be able to test that out, not say, like I said, you're doing it on a backup device or a device
Yeah,
that's basically a nice iPod Touch, because it doesn't have a cell signal. But if you don't have a backup, if you only have one device, I think we both agree, unless you're really adventurous and you don't mind fixing it yourself, because this is nothing, I'm sure the only thing Apple may be able to do is say, well, we can blow you up and start you from fresh.
yeah. And last year, the year before, maybe the year before that, I was putting betas on my only iPhone that I had at the time. I didn't have a spare
Yeah.
one to use. And funny enough, when WWDC come out, I said I wasn't going to put it on my
Mm-hmm.
device, and then like I realized I got this spare one,
Backup. Yeah.
so I thought, oh heck yeah, I'm going to put it on.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's Apple put this public betas out because if they can get possibly millions of people using the beta, think of how
Mm-hmm.
much more quickly they can get the bugs
Right.
worked out, right?
Right.
So,
But it's good
yeah,
to
that's
know,
that's
it's good to go in with your eyes open, saying the reason Apple has this out here is not for your benefit, it's really for their benefit.
oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah. Now,
So
one thing that go ahead.
let's see, we still have people out there saying, I put this beta on here, my phone crashed. You're like, yeah, it's a beta, it's going to
Yeah,
crash. It's
that's
an
right.
early beta, it's beta 2. It's, we still got 2+ months, because even though the iPhone probably will be announced probably second Tuesday in September, it's
Mhm.
going to be a week plus on top of that before the final version of iOS 15 comes out. And of course, they'll immediately have 15.1 ready to go for any bug fixes
Yeah.
or
Oh yeah.
features they want to add. So,
Yeah.
they're doing this as you're a tester. Just remember that you're a tester with this beta.
Yeah. There's a feedback app built right into the beta,
Yeah.
and it's there for a
Yeah.
reason. So one thing I did look at, but I haven't really played around with too much, is the new memories feature in Photos,
Okay.
which I think is kind of cool because you can actually put bona fide songs to your music,
Mm-hmm.
um, that they present you with that already done. And I haven't tried editing to see how they look and all that stuff. One thing I will say is the share button is disabled. I
Oh,
cannot share a memory from iOS 15 beta. And I'm sure
okay.
there's a good reason for that because, whether it's copyright issues for this music that they're using
Mm,
or whatever, maybe they don't have it all sorted out yet. I don't know, but
ooh,
or
that could be an issue.
maybe they just don't want things put out there yet. But the
Yeah.
the share sheet, for at least for me anyway, it's grayed out. It's there, but it's grayed out. You
Mm.
can't you can't
Now,
share a memory.
can you save a video?
No, because that's how you saved it. You use
Okay.
the share sheet to
Okay.
save the video, and you can't
Okay.
even do that. Now, the only
Ugh.
thing I haven't tried is doing a screen recording of one to
I
see
would
if it
say a
works, but
screen recording, but yeah, which
it,
I've
it
had
may
to
not
do
pick up
once
the
or
audio.
twice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had to do that with sometimes when I've done memories, and for whatever reason it just doesn't export well. So I've had to do a screen recording and then crop the video so it's so it's not cropped in, and that audio works. But like you said, you're getting into copyright and who pays what, and because if you save it, you can put it on YouTube, and then all of a sudden YouTube has a strike against you because you used the song that Apple licensed, but you didn't license.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And this was, forget how many, 10 plus years ago. I put a little bit, and this is before memories and everything else. I put a little photo slideshow together when Ruth went to Philadelphia for her job at the time. And I did a crappy recording. Basically, I played a YouTube video and then held my phone up to it to record the audio that way of Philadelphia Freedom.
Oh yeah.
And using, I mean, it was bad. It was by the way, kids, ask your parents. It was like doing a cassette recording off the radio.
Yes.
It was significantly worse. Yeah, but it was significantly worse than that.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I'm going to record this. So I got my record up there and I have my little tape player, and I'm going to put the tape player in front of the speakers. I'm going to hit record and I'm going to put the needle down on the record and have it record. It was that quality, but I still had a YouTube mark against me because it noticed it was a copyright song. I didn't have the rights to it. It said, oh, by the way, you don't have the rights. We're stripping the audio out of here.
Oh,
this is your first strike, so we're not going to do anything against you. But this is just heads up. We're taking this off of your video.
So they didn't give you a takedown notice. They just stripped the audio.
No, they stripped the audio.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I was monetizing it. And that's back when you could try to monetize, even if you were a tiny little person. Oh yeah. Now to monetize, you have to have so many thousands of followers and this and this and this, even before they even let you start monetizing now.
Right.
So, but yeah, so, and that's, like I said, 10 plus years ago, where companies weren't as sue happy as they are now. For like, oh, here's a YouTube channel, here's a YouTube video with 20 views, sue them, they're stealing our money. Like, no, I'm not.
Yeah. So one thing I'm curious about, and I don't know if it'll work, like, say if you sent me 3 or 4 pictures at a time through iMessage, I don't know if they would come in for me grouped together, where you could slide through them. I wonder if that has to be from an iOS 15 device. Maybe we'll try that sometime and just to see how it comes through on this one. But that's another feature that I'm looking forward to trying out too. So but that's about all I got on the beta. So
early days, still early days.
It's early days, and sometimes my spare time is devoted to sitting down trying to write this book, but otherwise I would have more time to play around with it. Didn't really notice anything in the camera. I can't recall anything in the camera. Now it's different, laid out slightly different because it's the 10s Max, not the 12 Pro Max. So I don't know. I'll play around with it, I'm sure, but hopefully there'll be another beta come out soon with more things to try and see what we can get. So I guess we got ourselves a show.
We do.
And so tell everybody where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter as ProfPod, and on the iPhoneography Facebook group, and on the MeWe Artful IPC group as Dave Podnar.
And we'll put links right there at the bottom of the screen for those. You can find me on Twitter at Macmillan_photo, on Instagram Macmillan Photo, and that blue Venza you saw in the photos. If you're watching the video, it's on Instagram at the blue Venza. Let's see where else. There's the iPhoneography, Artful iPhoneography community, which is on MeWe, and that's at artfulipc.club. The website for the podcast is iPhoneography.ca, and anytime we do a video for YouTube, the videos are embedded right in the post now. but you could also get the audio from Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, anywhere you can get a podcast, you could probably get the audio for it. Just look for iPhoneography podcast and it should show up. So I guess that's it. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks so much, Greg. And again, thanks to Joe for 2 weeks ago for coverage.
Yes, absolutely. And the Tiny Shutter alumni guys, they're always welcome on anytime they can. And we're so grateful that they're able to fill in for us when we can't make it. And otherwise, if one of us couldn't make it and nobody else could make it to fill in, well, I guess we'd have to miss that show, because I don't know about you, but I couldn't stand here and ramble on by myself for an hour. So, thanks to those guys. We really do appreciate it. And I guess we will see you all on the next one.
Have a great week, everyone.